agenda, the roll.
Sorry, Amy.
No, that's good. Thanks for remembering to do that, because I imagine that both Matt and Justin would want to watch this. So anyway, we just did the roll call. 3 of our regular members are there, plus our associated partners. And then we have a couple members from the public. So I was just saying, we have, right after I'm done talking here, we're going to do public comment on the agenda items that we have listed. And then at the end, we will take general comments from the public. I would ask members of the public to not interject or ask questions or make comments throughout the meeting, because it is a discussion for the personnel board, but we have that time set aside at the beginning, at the end. So let's do that now. Any members of the public who wish to comment on the agenda topics today?
Mr.
Go ahead, Vince. You can just unmute yourself. Go ahead.
Make comments now or later?
You can comment on the agenda topics now. You can do general comments at the end.
I'll do it at the end.
Okay, thank you. All right, so just to briefly review the agenda, I did send that out. Next, we'll approve the meeting minutes from March. I did watch the video of the meeting, and so I can vote on that. And Falco, correct me if I'm wrong, but with 3 of us, we do have a quorum, right?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. That's what I thought. Just wanted to confirm. So we'll approve the meeting minutes, and then we'll go back to unfinished business. And unfortunately, Justin, 1, he can't make it, and 2, he's not ready to talk about the staffing metrics work that he's been doing. So David's going to talk a little bit more about the rules and regulations, in particular the voting proposal that he had on the table from March. We'll address any new business, and then we'll have updates from the chief and others about any community involvement initiatives, any resignations, anything that affects staffing or the department in general, I guess. We'll do public comments, and then we will adjourn. So I don't know if we will need the whole hour. I do have an interview I need to conduct at 10, so I have to be done at like 9:55, but maybe that will be fine. Okay, so moving on to the second agenda item, to approve the meeting. Yeah, go ahead, Rita.
I was just gonna say, I moved to approve the meeting minutes from the last meeting.
Okay, and just to be clear, you're moving to approve the
The
revised.
corrected minutes, correct.
Okay,
I'll second that.
David seconds. Okay, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed? None. Okay. All right, good. Moving right along. So David did send out 2 documents. One was the lengthy rules and regulations document, which had all of the track changes and talked about in a written format what he had discussed verbally during our last meeting, his idea to revise the voting process to help us do that better next time, essentially. And then he also sent out an Excel document, the scoring comparison. So David, I'll turn it over to you to kind of walk through those.
Can I, before David begins discussing this, can I please bring up a few points?
Absolutely.
Okay, the procedures for securing candidates came about when I came on board about this time last year. I followed the entire process from the testing to the interview. I was present at every interview and scored each candidate from 0 to 100. And so I had an opportunity to observe the committee in action. And though David has put forth that the scoring is the problem, I'd like to put forth a different theory. So please hear me out on this, because I don't believe it's scoring. I believe that the theory should be, we are not putting the best candidates at the top of the list for forwarding to council. That is the problem, not the scoring. And council saw fit to put 5 people on this committee, hopefully to get a diversity of thought and ideas and beliefs. And in the end, council's intent was circumvented because really only 2 members scored the candidates. And I don't presume to know what those 2 scorers believe. I believe that they scored in good faith, that they listened to the
Excuse me
candidates.
for a second, but would this not be better for executive session?
No, I think it needs to
We
be
need
heard.
to-
because We
Oh,
are
yeah.
changing things that involve the community and involve council. And I'm not naming names. I'm just explaining a process that I see as the problem. We do not.
Yeah,
And
the only-
I'm
the
sorry,
only
Falco, go ahead.
Yeah, the only comment that I would make, because it is difficult, with us doing this remotely in terms of what should be an executive session and what's proper for public discussion, I would stay away from any in-depth discussion of how the previous board made their decisions in terms of the scoring. If we're going to talk more generally about the process as a whole, that's fine for public discussion, but if it's going to drill down into the details of that past decision-making, those decision-making processes are proper for executive session. So I don't know what you're going to say, and I apologize for interrupting, but
Yeah, no, I'm
as
not
long
going
as-
to, no, it's not naming names. It's just that diversity of thought is important. And when you don't have diversity of thought, you don't have diversity in your police boards, you don't have diversity to put forth candidates that are a whole range of people. And I also believe that the second thing that was the problem with the process last time was that there were differences in how the personnel board members, the scrutiny and the effort in evaluating the candidates was just not there. It was obvious that in some cases, the candidates' resumes were not even read. And the process was rushed to accommodate time of people. And there was no time taken to make sure that every person on the committee could be there. Now, I know this committee meets in the morning and people have jobs, and that is what they do, but you have to put forth the effort. This is an important board, and I don't think that effort was put forth. And also, scoring from 60 to 100 is inherently discriminatory to women and minorities because it gives low scoring veterans as much as 60-point benefit when it comes to what David's doing. And the result makes it impossible to have a police force that reflects the diversity of the community. You can't do it that way. And then you're squeezing the scores together to see very little difference in the candidates. And there were differences that need to be looked at so that we get the best candidates to our board, to our community. And last week, one of the citizens asked, "Are you giving 50 points to the candidates?" And somebody said, "Oh, no, we're not doing that." We most certainly are doing that. So don't issue a falsehood. The truth is we are giving 50 points to each person who has come forth as a candidate. And I think we need to look at that. Maybe, and David, I know you did a lot of work on this, but it makes no sense to me at all. I mean, 0 to 100 makes sense to me. I can do that. I've done that before. But this is so convoluted. And just think about it for a minute. It was, if you have all 5 people scoring, it eliminates any problem with one person going off the deep end and scoring ridiculous because you've got that range there of 5 people looking at these candidates. That is the answer. It is not changing all the scoring, in my opinion, and I would not vote for this kind of thing to move forward. Maybe what we need is somebody to come in and teach us a little bit about HR. And by the way, Dave, did this scoring process, was it in some journal somewhere for HR people? I mean, where did this come from?
No, I mean, I created it. I'm sure there's similar scoring systems out there. My issue with a 0 to 100 scale is I look at it from a legal perspective. So from a legal perspective, with the 0 to 100 scale, that can put us in a position where somebody claims that they were scored improperly for discriminatory motives. unless we set up guidelines to say, okay, for this category of question, if they say this, that's an automatic X number of points. If they say this, that's an automatic X number of points. It's all born out of, well, Rita, you're shaking your head. I will ask Falco.
No, I'm not shaking my head. I'm just trying to understand. I mean, like,
Well, I mean,
I
maybe
think-
Falco can explain it better, but without the whole reason why, and I don't want to dive into the details. So Falco, feel free to interrupt me if you think I'm getting too far into the details. But the whole reason why you come up with.
Yeah, let me
Oh.
let me just interrupt again, because again, it's challenging because I don't know what people are going to say, and once
Yeah.
the horse is out of the barn, it's hard to close the door. If we're going to have these discussions with respect to the legality and discriminatory impact and so forth, those discussions would be best in executive session because of the legal implications that surround them.
Okay,
Again, it's very difficult to interrupt people, once comments are made, and so
yeah,
it sounds like this discussion overall should be something in executive session because of those concerns.
right, okay. Then in that case,
So
then
we
I'll,
could
I'm sorry.
yeah, we
go
could
ahead,
go
Falco.
into executive session. We could go into executive session right now. We could go through the remainder of the agenda, go into executive session at the end, because I doubt that we're coming back to voting on anything today, so that we don't hold up those in the public that are listening in on the rest of the discussion. So I'll leave that up to Amy, how she wants to proceed with the rest of the meeting.
Yeah, that probably makes sense. However, sorry, let me go back to the agenda.
We're not
So-
voting today, are we? We're not voting on anything today?
I mean, we could, I'd probably prefer not to with Matt and Justin not here.
Yeah,
But
I
we have a
mean-
quorum, so we could.
Well, I just put forth a different look at the problem and stated it differently, a different thesis, if you would. And as any good scientist or English major would do, I think your thesis has faults in it, and I explained why, because that's how
Right,
I
and
look at it.
I'm happy to explain why I came up with this system, but pursuant to Falco's advice, that's more proper for executive session, and what I have in my mind to explain falls
Would
under
you-
what Falco just
Will you
said.
eventually explain this to council?
Yes, I have no
Okay, and
problem
would-
explaining it to anybody.
And would it be explained to
Well-
the general public as well? Because if this affects them, this will be.
I mean,
in-
I'm willing to do that right now. I'm willing to explain the scoring system right now
So what's,
and
the-
then save the explanation as to why I came up with it for executive session.
Yeah,
Right,
I
and-
think that's the key so what we can do now is talk about proposals going forward. What I would prefer we not do until we're in executive session is talk about what happened in the past, because then we get
Right.
into it's a very fine line between what we should say for Falco's advice. So if
Yeah.
we want to talk about proposals going forward, so Rita, you laid out a theory. What's your
I
proposal?
propose that we keep it at 0 to 100 and that we have all 5 people who are on this committee do the interviewing and do the scoring. And I think that we will not be discriminatory to others and that we will be fair to everybody. And that is my theory.
Okay. I think that's pretty straightforward, and unless anyone has questions. And then David has and I appreciate both of you bringing proposals to the table, because, that's what we need is what are the ideas? And then at some point, when everyone understands the ideas on the table, we can move forward to vote on those. So thank you, appreciate that. Is it, trying to figure out if we should go into executive session so we can talk more openly about why we got to the scoring recommendations that two of you are making, or if it's feasible to explain the mechanics of that without going backwards and historical.
But Amy, what I'd suggest is that I at least go through that Excel spreadsheet example that I did.
Okay.
Since there are a couple members of the public here. So at least, at least that part, they're not either waiting for us to come out of executive session or, I think that's something I can cover just my proposal without kind of reference to past systems.
Okay, so let's do this. David will explain the spreadsheet and his methodology. We'll answer questions about that or make sure that everyone understands what he's putting forth. We will then take any new business, so items 5 and then item 6 and 7 public comments. And then we can adjourn and go into the executive session for sort of the why this might make sense and how it relates to the previous process discussion. That sound good?
That's good with me.
Okay. All right. Go ahead.
All right, I'll share my screen. Oh, I cannot share my screen. It
Oh, and
says
by the
host-
way, Carolyn joined us, so just
Okay.
so everyone's aware, it's hard to see in the room who's there, but
So I can't, it says host disabled participant screen sharing. So I don't know, maybe Amy, maybe you
It
can
can give you
share your
permission.
screen.
I can, hold on. Oh, no,
Okay.
I get the same message. I can't,
The chief is the only one, I think. He's the host.
or he has to give permission. to other-
Permission.
Okay, I'm looking at share screen right now.
Do you have it pulled up on your?
We don't want a whiteboard, right?
Now, do you have access to that spreadsheet document, the Excel?
Oh, I do not. I'd have to give it to you, David. I do not on this computer. I'd have to give you the screen.
Oh, that, if you could do that, that's good then.
Trying to figure that one out.
So I circulated as chief does that. I circulated 2 things. One was a red line of the Word document with suggested changes to the to the document sections that relate to scoring. And that is very thick because I tried to make it as, I wrote it as a lawyer essentially. So it contains, it tries to contain all the legal language. If we're considering it, we probably have to have Falco, take a look at it, but I tried to draft it as an attorney, which is why the Word document is, there's a lot of changes and there's a lot to follow in it. But that's because, I was trying to be thorough as if I was writing the legal document myself.
And you were.
So that, so that's why I probably should have put together some Word summary of the changes in more plain language. But the second document I then sent was the Excel spreadsheet, which was supposed to show how it would work in action. And the Excel spreadsheet is what I want to share on the screen.
David, if I
yeah.
make you host, then how about that for now?
Okay, that should work, I think. I'm not super familiar with Zoom. Okay, it looks like I am now the host.
Now, if you go down below, there's a share screen option, I think.
Yeah, okay, so I'm gonna share the Excel spreadsheet. Can everybody see the Excel spreadsheet?
Yes,
Okay, unfortunately, on my screen, the video of people is blocking the last little bit of the screen, but hopefully that's
yeah,
not
it is
happening
on
for
mine
you.
as well.
Oh, okay, if I scroll over like that, does it show up?
Yes,
Okay, so maybe I can just, if I just resize this very slightly and do like a 95% zoom, it should get. There we go, okay. So this is the last column here. Can everybody see that column
Mhm.
that I have highlighted? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so The idea of the system is essentially a forced spread of scores. As background, before I get into this specific system, the two things to keep in mind are, well, three things to keep in mind are that there's both a written and oral exam component to the final grade for all candidates. And we have nothing to do with the written exam component. We only have something to do with the oral exam component. The second thing to keep in mind is by town statute, the passage rates for both the written or passing scores for both the written exam and the oral exam are set by town ordinance. So we have no control over, well, we can suggest to the town that they change the minimum scores for the written exam and the oral exam, but we don't control that. So the passing scores are set by town council and we have to adhere to that. And those
And I-
are the whatever they are, 70% on each.
I
think.
was just gonna say, I think it's 70, yeah.
So I think it's 70%. They have to score a 70% or higher on the written exam to make it to the oral exam. And then they have to score a 70% or higher on the oral exam in order to be eligible to be forwarded to town council. That's the second thing to keep in mind.
Now,
third-
can I ask a question on the written exam? They are on a 0 to 100 scale, correct?
I actually have no idea. I mean, I don't know how the written exam is scored at all.
David, according to what I read, it says it's 100 possible, but it's weighted at 60%.
Right, that was the third thing I was going to get to was, so I don't know how the scoring for the written exam works. I would imagine it's probably 0 to 100, but I don't know. And then the third thing I was going to get to is the weighting between the written exam and the oral exam is also set by town council, not by us. And the written exam score is weighted by 60%. And the oral exam score is 40% of the final score. So, you know, in practice, the final score generally should be out of 200 points, a possible 100 points from the written exam. But because of the weighting, it would actually be 120 out of 200. And then a possible 100 points from the oral exam. But again, because of weighting, it would be 80 out of 200. You know, so 120 for the written and 80 for the oral is how the 60-40% weighting would work in practice out of a total of 200 points. So those are just the three things to keep in mind that are out of our control, you know, that are the parameters within which we have to work and that we cannot change. We can only suggest to town council that they change. So those are the rules we live under. So what the scoring system what this Excel spreadsheet shows is how a straight average would differ from the proposal that I'm putting forth. And so everything in yellow where it says average in yellow and points in yellow. Okay, and these do assume a 60 to 100 scale, and I can do different ones, you know, based on other total point scales. This we mentioned 60 and 50 last time. I think in the meeting we might have talked about 60 more, so that's just what I picked to set this example from. And so what I did with the example is I took 10 hypothetical candidates. So candidate, and I just numbered them candidate 1 through candidate 10. And I took 5 hypothetical scorers, graders for each candidate. And then that's all I did is I used a random number generator. And so for 3 of the scorers, I just generated random numbers between 60 and 100. And they could repeat so that, you know, you could give the 2 different candidates, one scorer could give 2 different candidates the same score. But it was purely randomly generated. I just said, give me a set of 10 numbers between 60 and 100, and the numbers can repeat. And when they gave me the 10 numbers, I entered them in as scores. So for 3 of the graders, I said 3 of the graders, just put them randomly between 60 and 100. And then let's say that the 4th grader is a lower grader, so make theirs randomly between 60 and 85. And the 5th grader is a higher grader, make theirs randomly between 90 and 100. You know, that was all somewhat arbitrary, but I tried to come up with some kind of realistic randomization. So from that, you know, each scorer scores each candidate. And then I gave them the straight average for each candidate. So this column here is the straight oral exam average that these candidates got. And then over on this side, I just reordered these scores. So these scores and these scores are the same. They're just reordered from highest to lowest. So, you know, this is the highest graded candidate here with 88.2. So I put them at the top line and so on. That's this column here. This column is just the straight average resorted. Now, again, these were all random, so I didn't pick any scores. So the random result of that was a spread in scores from 78.6 being the lowest to 88.2 being the highest. What my proposal says is anybody who scores under 70, so it didn't happen here because of the randomness, but anybody who scores under 70 is eliminated from consideration. They just wouldn't be considered because they don't hit the town 70-point mark that the town has set as passing for the oral exam. And again, if we change this to 50 or 40 or 0, you know, somebody might hit the 70 or a few might hit the 70 and be eliminated.
Hey, David,
Yeah,
I was actually just playing with your spreadsheet, and if the lowest grader, I didn't play with the highest grader, but if the lowest grader gives all of those people a 0, let's say, which is highly unlikely, but or any of those people, a different way to say it, a 0, only 2 of them would get an average of over 70. So basically they could eliminate 8 of the 10 candidates in this example here, which to me is why 60 to 100 or something higher than 0 makes sense. But just a FYI for the group, and you know, you probably mathematically could look at it in different ways, but that's what
yeah,
I was
I haven't
Can I-
played with it all that way.
Can I add that you have 5 people scoring? That, you know, if you had this 5 people scoring from 0 to 100, you will probably get the same results.
no,
If
that's what I'm
if they
saying.
do it randomly, I mean, if they don't, you know, and they are giving their own scores for each candidate, I don't see that it would be fairer.
Well, and to respond to that specifically, you know, the reason why I proposed some minimum score, whether it's 60, 50, 40, whatever, is to remove some gamesmanship. Because if 4 scorers are scoring honestly, and one person just wants to submarine the system and say, I'm giving everybody I don't like a 0, then the likelihood is anybody that person gives a 0 to will fail. Because
Why do you have to impugn someone's good faith? If they are listening,
Rita,
and they are
because I'm an
scoring.
attorney and I've had a lot of experience with people who do stuff like that. And I can say from firsthand experience that I've had it happen in this exact scenario.
Okay,
From
well,
firsthand experience, I can say that I have seen it happen. That's not a story that I heard from somebody else. That is me witnessing it firsthand. So, I mean, I think it's great that you have such faith in
I
people
do,
that you
I
think
do.
people will
I have-
always act in good faith, but they don't.
why would
As
you
an
want to be on
attorney who has
this
done this,
committee?
I can guarantee you they don't.
Why would you want to be on this committee? I mean, I don't understand that.
It's not anybody on, it's not against anybody on this committee. It's just life generally. I mean,
Okay,
and again, Carolyn can confirm this. I expressed my concerns with our scoring system last year to her. Because I said, if somebody wants to game the system, they can.
Again, let's try.
Yeah,
Some
no,
of the-
I'm just saying that I've had a concern with the scoring system, since I've joined the committee. Not because of people on the committee, because I have seen it happen in other circumstances firsthand. I just know how this gamesmanship can work. So part of the reason for having a minimum score is to eliminate that gamesmanship. So that's that point. But then getting back to the scoring system, this is the straight average from people. And what I say is, instead of having a range of 78.6 to 88.2, we take all the candidates who are eligible, who score more than 70%. So they've already passed their exam and they score more than 70% on the oral exam. We take those candidates and we space their scores out evenly between 170. So it's just, sorry about that. So it's just basically a forced spread to say our best candidate gets the highest score, our lowest scored candidate gets the lowest possible passing score, and everybody else in between is equally distributed score-wise. And so down here, this table is meant to show how the differences work. And so in a straight average, this is the straight average, which is the same as this column here. So it's just a copy of that column, and the candidates are in the same order as they are up here. So these two columns are the same as up here. The green is what the scoring would be under my proposed scoring system, which is this column here is the same as it is up here. So I guess those three columns are actually the same, just in a different order. So the person who got the 88.2, their final oral examination grade would be 100. The person who got 78.6, their final grade would be a 70 for the oral exam score. And then everybody else is evenly spaced in between. For this, you'll see up here, I put a note, because two people ended up with the exact same average. This assumes that we took a vote to break that tie between them. If we can't come to a decision, if it's a 2-2 deadlock with the fifth person not voting, then they would get the same score. It would just be the average of these two numbers here. So instead of one getting slightly higher than the other, they would both get the average of what these two scores are. But that's a very minor point. And then this third column, so remember, the one thing I said to keep in mind is the oral exam is only weighted 40%. So in reality, that means out of a scale of 200 total possible points, 100 for the written and 100 for the oral, when you weight it, it's really, you get 120 possible points for the written exam and you get 80 possible points for the oral exam. So this column is the yellow column that matches this to be out of 80. That just scales down their average out of 100 down to out of 80 to reflect the 40% weighting for the oral exam. So under our current system, this would be the spread of scores out of 200 points that each candidate would get. So they would get, the top candidate would get 70.56 points out of 200 for their final score, combining the oral and written exam. They'd get 70.56 points for the oral exam. The bottom scoring candidate would get 62.88 points out of 200 for the oral exam part. The spread is less than 10 points from the top to the bottom, from the highest scoring candidate to the lowest scoring candidate under our current system with these randomizations. What my system says is, by having a forced spread, instead of the highest getting a 70.56 out of 200 and the lowest getting a 62.88 out of 200. Instead, the highest candidate gets the highest possible score of 80 out of 200. The lowest candidate gets the lowest possible passing score of 56 out of 200. And everybody else is spaced in between. So the spread between the top and the bottom, instead of being less than 10 points, is 24 points. And that's pretty much it.
Any questions?
So you have given each candidate 60 points or 50 points?
In this example, I used 60 because that's what we had talked about in the meeting. But that
Okay.
can be, we can do other randomizations with a different, with a different scale.
And as I look at the spread, they are so squeezed that differentiation between the candidates in so many ways is almost eliminated. I mean, there's just basically no difference. I mean,
Well, there is under
3
my
points or
proposed.
4 points. It just seems that we really haven't zeroed in on the best. We've just sort of, made everybody sort of average.
Well, again, remember, we are limited by the town to oral exams only being 40% of the score. And
I
that's
know that.
something that's out of our control. We cannot control that. We can, if we think that needs to change, we can politely ask Jack and Carolyn to present that to town council, but that's something that has to change at the town council level. There's nothing we can do about that. And so, yes, you could come up with a bigger spread, but the fact that the oral exam is weighted only 40% is limiting. That's a limiting factor, and that's what town council decided they wanted. So council decided that the written exam is more important than the oral exam.
So Rita, what's your recommendation?
Well, I said that my recommendation is to have 5 people scoring and to use 0 to 100, or if you want to raise that 0 a little bit, give them 20 points. But I just think that it gives such an advantage to a disadvantage to people who are not veterans when you give all those points away. And I think that when that happens, you are not really discriminating between the candidates in a good way. I mean, finding the best. I mean, when I listened to people, I saw holes in their answers and things that they said that didn't make any sense to me. And I think those things are important when you're interviewing, and you have to take those in consideration when you give the scores. I did not give any score in my scoring lower than 40. Because if they answered the question, yeah, I know, but I'm just saying, my score didn't even count, so it doesn't matter. But I mean, I'm saying if you're a logical person listening, you are going to have people that should not get over 60.
Yeah,
over
and
60 points.
that's all stuff that, again, I'll talk about in executive session pursuant to what Falco said earlier. I'll address that in executive session.
Well, David, correct me if I'm wrong, David, but the whole concept behind what you presented to us is to remove any chance of prejudice by any individual.
Oh, no,
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, you can never completely eliminate
no.
prejudice. And again, Chief, that once I get into that discussion, I think that's probably more executive. I mean, that's one of my goals, but to talk more about the specifics of that, I'll do that in executive session. But that's one of my goals, is to limit that as much as possible. It's yeah, I think if I start talking about my follow-up point to that, I think it dives too much into the details. So I need to save that for executive session.
Okay, so since we have less than 20 minutes left, let's complete the rest of the agenda and then see if we have like 5 minutes for the executive session.
Yeah.
So,
And the only other thing I wanted to mention was, I think that the veterans preference points are a good thing overall. But I don't think they should be moving candidates that are ranked 8 or 9 up to number 1. And in our current scoring system, in this example, the veterans' preference points would determine, let's just assume, because it's out of our control, that everybody scored exactly the same on the written exam. I know that's unrealistic, but it's out of our control. There's nothing we can do for it. So in terms of the example, let's just assume they all scored exactly the same score on the written exam. In this example, the veterans' preference points are the deciding factor, period. If anybody gets the veterans' preference points, they are in the top 3. Or you know, if there's more than 3 people who get the points, you know, obviously they wouldn't hit the top 3, but if you get what I'm saying, is anybody who gets the veterans preference points are automatically at the top of the list, even the lowest scorer. Under my proposed system, the veterans preference points can move somebody from numbers 4 to 1 if you have 10 candidates, but not higher. They can't go from 10 to 1. They can't go from 6 to 1. And that's what I think the veterans preference points are designed to do, is to give a preference where there's a close call, not to say that should be the single determining factor. So that's the only other thing I wanted to point out in this system, is that, you know, it's assuming the written scores are all the same, which is ridiculous, but it's also just out of our control. You know, it sets up a system where it's, you know, those points are counting for people who are in contention, and they're not making, you know, they are not the determinant factor for somebody else who otherwise would not be in contention.
Makes sense. Okay, so I mentioned already, because Justin's not here, we're not going to do the staffing metrics. Is there any new business to discuss?
Amy, I don't know if it's appropriate at the moment, but Mr. Casey and I were talking the other day about updates. Do you want me to save that for police updates, or right now an update on the social worker interns and such?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah.
So the short of it is, this Friday will be the last day that our first social worker, David, if you could throw me back hosting duties.
Yeah. Where do I
Window, yeah, there should be an option if you hover over our picture for you to throw them back to me.
Oh, okay. Give me 1 second. I gotta find your picture.
Meanwhile, her last day's Friday. She will graduate with a master's degree in social work. Council may or may not consider, I won't speak for them, you know, a full-time position, you know, in the near future or down the road. In the meantime, though, I have interviewed 2, and I anticipate a 3rd candidate for another intern this coming school year, beginning in August. Already, you know, like I said, interviewed 2 of them. I hope to get 1, possibly 2 interns for next year. That's really kind of, you know, I can give an opinion and ask, but ultimately the school makes the final decision on placement. And, you know, with any luck, we'll have at least 1 intern, and I don't know, but I'm hoping, like I said, I'm hopeful that the town might consider hiring somebody in the near future for a full-time position in that regard.
And Chief, were you happy with, I've heard rave reviews about, I wasn't able to come down and listen to her speak, but I've heard people say that it was really great. And what did you think? Are you happy with that possibility?
I will say this, Rita, yes. The short answer is yes. I believe that the program has very good potential to grow here. It sounds like from the people I talked to in Hampton that program in the last 3 years it's been in existence just has grown exponentially, where they have hired their first intern into a full-time position. I think they just added a part-time position for one of their other interns, with the idea that maybe it'll grow into a second full-time position. Now, I don't want to put the cart before the horse here. I think our program has potential. I mean, we have twice the amount of population as Hampton, and probably, I don't know, square mileage over there, but we're a bigger animal. And I think that that just means we have more potential. And I think that whether it's Tori or who we have now, or it's future interns or whoever, I think that they need to explore growing the program like Hampton has. I've heard Hampton does things for, domestic abuse victims and veterans, like touching different walks of life. I believe and hope that that position would have value here in the town. I think that our current intern, I'll say this, she would probably admit it if she was here, she's probably limited or was limited by the hours she was available. She has a full-time job with the Lighthouse Foundation in Butler County. Going to school and being an intern here kind of limited her to kind of the 3 to 11 shift. I think if she had a little bit more flexibility in her hours, it would have been even more beneficial in this first year. I think it kind of limited the amount of cases she could get involved with and such, but from boarding situations to elderly folks that need help with services and all places in between domestic violence. I think social workers could touch that, maybe pick the ball up where the police officer gets it to a certain point, but he has to go back in service, or she does, to answer the next call. Maybe that's where the social worker comes in and offers some help.
Right, it's that follow through that is, you can't, as police officers can't manage all of that. It's almost impossible. It's the follow through that somebody like that can give you that really helps the community. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, Chief, any other updates on staffing or community involvement or anything else from the?
Community involvement, we do Bigs in Blue every other Thursday. We just did a reverse day last Thursday where all of the students from McKnight Elementary came to us and we gave them for the police station. We fed them. We took them over to the EMS building and showed them, because we have 2 medics now that are part of our Bigs in Blue program. 3 police officers, 3 medics. We hope to continue to grow that program. Sergeant Egley just did which care home he was at yesterday escapes me, but he does talks with these what's the nice way of saying it, assisted living. Thank you, Carolyn. Where like scams and such against the elderly. He went and did a talk just yesterday. He does this periodically to try to keep folks in the know on how to protect themselves and don't fall victim to those types of crimes. We do community engagement, as often as we possibly get a chance to, when an opportunity presents itself. And I'm forgetting them, Amy, and I know we're limited on time, so I'll move on to staffing. I just wanted to give you folks a glimpse. I know everybody in their heart in this personnel board wants the same thing. It's just how we get there. But I'll say that, one of my concerns has been for a while and continues to grow is how we score them may not matter if we can't get candidates. And I have great concern there. Peters Township, I'll use them as an example. Sorry, Peters, but they just rolled out, everyone in Allegheny County except us probably right now is testing for police officers. I believe this is going to be a nationwide, epidemic of sorts where you're going to have a shortage, continue to have a shortage of law enforcement officers. Peters Township just rolled out a test. They got 0 candidates. So they re-rolled out their ad, and I haven't heard yet if they've had anyone apply. And I'm hearing that around, the area, Northern Regional, just to our north, they typically get probably darn near 100 candidates, 75, 100. Right now, the last time they rolled out their test, they got 14 people that took the test. So that's going to be a challenge we're all going to face. And I know we need to test, but right now I'm afraid that we would be white noise out there because everyone else is testing and getting hardly anyone to take the exams. How do we solve that? If we figure that out, we'll sell the answer, right? The last 5 years here, I just ran some numbers yesterday to present to you folks. I just went back 5 years. We've had 9 retirements in the police department. 5 of them were command staff. So the entire command staff has pretty much turned over in the last 5 years. 9 officers have retired. 2 were given to the school district and their positions were not replaced. So that's a net loss of 11 souls. And in that same 5 years, we hired 5. And like I said, I'm only going back 5. Don't hold me hard to those numbers, but that's my quick math was. Of those 5 we've hired, only 1 in the last 3+ years. And you folks were able to help us get that 1. a few months ago. So, and to go 5 years into the future, let me end with this. There are 10 more that are eligible in the next 5 years. Almost my entire command staff, except for one sergeant, in the next 5 years eligible. Now, there's a drop program that a few of them might take advantage of and stick around just a bit longer, but that's going to be a very low number based on, my talks with these officers that will become eligible. I'm just saying, we got to get a list. We got to make hires a priority. It's going to be a continuous process too. I know I probably sound like a broken record, but I just, the word grim is my outlook right now. We've got to tackle this. This is something that you folks, we got to nail down how you want to score. We got to roll out a process and prepare for this.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's really concerning. And, you asked the question, how do we solve? One of the options that's still on the table is use our existing list of the people who already interviewed. So, that's not necessarily off the table at this point. Okay, so.
Amy?
Yeah.
To that point, we have the opportunity after 24 months to extend that for 1 year. And we have to be cognizant of that date, because if it sneaks up and we're not getting anywhere, we may want to extend that.
Okay, good to know. Okay, so I don't think we're gonna have time for executive session. Even, not that I have to be there, but if I'm not there, then you only have 2 people, and I just don't know if it makes sense to have 2 out of 5 for executive session. Plus, I understand that there's probably other people than me that have commitments starting at 10. So let's move to public comments.
I have high respect for the function that this committee provides. And what I will suggest are possible improvements. David's evaluation process, I'll use his words from the previous meeting. He said that the group of candidates that were evaluated, presented to the council, was a train wreck. So I would suggest that David uses his evaluation process for that group of candidates that was previously evaluated to see if the process alleviates the train wreck. The process he's proposed exaggerates the difference between candidates, and I think is still subjective. Candidates need to have very good communication skills and ability to write accurate reports. If they're not able to do that, then the prosecution of individuals could be hampered, or individuals could be unduly prosecuted if the information is not totally correct. Military veterans get a preference, and that's well documented. Some, but not all, military veterans are trained to terminate situations rather than de-escalate. Some of those veterans carry that terminating attitude throughout their lives. So how do you differentiate between those individuals and the individuals that desire to de-escalate situations? And I believe that the board needs to come up with alternative evaluation systems before finalizing what's in front of them. And they need to step back and ask, will this process identify the best candidates for the positions you want to fill? Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. Other public comments?
Yes, I'd like to go ahead and comment. My name is Ramona Nelson. I'm at 205A Carriage Hill Road. I apologize for not being on camera. I hadn't planned to speak, and I wasn't dressed to be on camera. So I just used the most effective approach. I did want to express concern about a couple things I heard in the meeting. I think they build on what Vince said, and probably he said them much better. The first is that when you're looking at correcting for bias by adding points, you're simply adding one bias to another. You need to go back, I would say, at that point and look at your scoring system. What are the questions on the guide? What is the rubric? What is the guide for scoring that goes with the rubric? And say, why are we getting these wild variations? What are we seeing that we differ on? Rather than simply add points. The second thing, I think there's a mathematical error when you take a point, when you're trying to balance scores by saying one is weighed more than the other. It's pretty simple mathematically to do that by converting to rates and then taking the weight. I can send you a simple equation that shows that you just add, for example, if the scores are 40 and 60, and you want to measure a percent of them, you simply take it times the percent. I'll send you a formula, that's gonna make more sense. But I think to add points presents a mathematical fallacy in the way that you calculate it. So I go back and take another look at that from just a basic mathematical approach. The third thing was when I looked at the final oral exam grade, I see that I'm thinking that it's been done by adding the points, 100, making 100, making 120, because I was confused why the first candidate on there has over 11 points added to their grade. The last candidate on there has 8 points taken from their grade.
Okay, I'm sorry to interrupt. I need to go. I have an interview that I need to conduct at 10.
I'm
So
finished,
I will
thank you.
drop off. Thank you. And I think that, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I need to leave. And Falco, will we have enough people to vote to adjourn if I drop off?
To listen to public comment, what I would suggest with the executive session, you're permitted to have an executive session separate from this meeting called by the board, and then just announce it that you had it at our next meeting. So it sounds like we have a lot probably to discuss in executive session, and maybe it should be its own standalone meeting.
Okay.
Falco, can we vote to adjourn now, but delay the adjournment until public comment is finished?
No, I would take the public comment now. Amy can leave, and then you take the motion to adjourn with the 2 remaining members.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I didn't know we
Thank
could do
you,
that.
everyone.
Yeah, you want
Thank
the
you,
public
Amy.
comment to be part of the meeting.
Hi, Amy.
Amy.
I guess she's finished speaking.
Okay,
Yeah, you could keep going with public comment.
Go on ahead, Ramona.
okay, thank you. I really actually have finished. I apologize for not being a little better organized, explaining the mathematics of that. But typically, if you go back and look at it, I think you'll be able to figure out where my concerns are there. I also, like Vince, want to say thank you for the many hours and the amount of work that you've been putting in, trying very, very effective. Yeah, I think you're working with the goal in mind of getting the best candidates for the community. And I want to thank you for putting that effort in and doing that work. And that's all I have to say.
And just really quickly, just so
Yeah,
it's clear.
Just a second, I
I'm
wanted to make, I had a quick question. I'm Glenn Nelson, and Ramona is my wife, so we're on the same thing. My question is this: is if you go into executive session at any point in time, who are the people that participate in the executive session? Is it just the 5 members of the committee, or is it the alternates? Is it the members of council? Who participates in that meeting?
It's all of us. So it's the actual committee, and then if Jack, I, and Ryan are here, it just depends on the meeting, but those are the ones who would attend.
Thank you.
And then just really clear, just really quickly to make sure it was clear. The 10 veterans points are set by state law. So that's not something that we did. And by state law, they get added to the final score. So whatever our final score is, an additional, if somebody has the veterans preference, whatever their final score otherwise would be, there's an additional 10 points added to that score. I just wanted to make sure that was clear because I did not explain the veterans preference at all when I was going over my scoring procedure. And I know the members of the committee know about it, but I didn't, I did not put that explanation in for the benefit of the public, which I probably should have done. So my apologies on that if I wasn't clear. But just to make sure it is clear, the 10 points is a set number of points and it's set by state law to be added at the end of the scoring process.
Is that all the comments from public that we have? Then I think David and I should probably adjourn the meeting.
I guess, I guess I'll move to adjourn.
And I second.
All right, I don't know, I guess all in favor, I guess we technically, aye. All right, so we are adjourned. All right, thank you, everybody.
And again,
Yeah, thank you.
this is Falco.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
okay.
Before we adjourn, again, we can now coordinate the scheduling of a standalone executive session. If the board wants to do that, you can do that offline. It doesn't have to be, coordinated at this public session, as long as when we have the executive session, that we announce that we had it at our next meeting, our next public meeting.
Yeah,
So
we'll
we
have
can
to-
coordinate all that.
Yeah. We can do this by email, right? We can just coordinate it by email.
Yes, just the scheduling is not a violation of anything, to coordinate that. Yes, you can do that by email.
Falco, should we have made a motion to reconvene instead of to adjourn?
No, executive sessions aren't recorded, aren't part of the
Okay.
meeting per se. They can be their own standalone. We should be
Okay.
good.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're adjourned and we'll, we'll try to schedule something through email. We can't discuss through email, but we can schedule through email.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, thank
All
you,
right.
everybody.
Thank you.